The dining room smelled like roasted lamb and entitlement. My mother had set the table with the good plates, the white ones with the gold rims she only brought out for occasions she considered important. There were 8 people seated, my father at the head, my brother to his left, in a button-down shirt that still had the fold lines in it. Aunts and uncles arranged like an audience. I sat at the far end. My father cleared his throat and said, the way a man says something he has already decided, "We think it's time you did the right thing for this family. Marcus deserves stability. You have more than enough. The mansion should go to him." 8 pairs of eyes turned to me. Nobody asked if I was okay with this. Nobody remembered the bus stop. I looked at my father for a long moment. Then I smiled, not a performed smile, a real one, and said, "Give me 1 minute." I already knew what was in the safe. Part 1, I was 17 years old the night my parents asked me to leave. Not asked. I crossed, and her eyes somewhere above my crossed, and her eyes somewhere above my head, and my father said, "You need to figure out your own life. We can't keep doing this." I still don't fully know what this was. I had not been arrested. I had not failed school, and in fact I was doing well in school quietly without anyone noticing enough to mention it. I had not brought chaos into that house. What I had done, as far as I could piece together then and in the years since, was disagree. Not loudly, not dramatically. I had simply started having opinions that didn't align with the ones already in the room, and in that house, that particular thing was treated as a form of damage. My brother Marcus was 14. He stood at the top of the stairs and watched me pick up the bag by the door. He didn't say anything. I looked up at him once, just once, and his expression was the thing I carried with me longest afterward. Not sadness, not guilt, relief. Even at 14, he already understood that my leaving made more room for him. I walked out into a November night that was colder than I had dressed for. The bag had 2 changes of clothes, a phone with a cracked screen and 12% battery, and a library card I would later discover was the most useful thing I owned. I had $43. I want to say I had a plan. I didn't. What I had was the particular stubbornness of a person who has been told they are the problem so many times that they have developed, somewhere underneath the hurt, a quiet determination to prove the diagnosis wrong. Not to the people who made it, just, in general, to the world, to themselves. The first night I slept at a friend's house. The second night her mother found out and was kind about it but firm. By the 4th night I had learned where the heated bus shelters were, the ones with the long benches, the ones where the transit authority didn't clear people out until 5 in the morning. I became very familiar with the bus shelter on Clement and 9th. It had a particular smell, metal and something faintly chemical from the cleaning solution they used on Thursdays. The bench was hard in a way that your body never fully adjusts to. In the early weeks, I would wake up at 3 in the morning completely disoriented, reaching for a wall that wasn't there, taking several seconds to reassemble where I was and why. Later, I stopped reaching for the wall. That was not an improvement. What kept me moving was routine. The thing nobody tells you about survival is that structure saves you when everything else has dissolved. I was at the library when it opened every morning. I used the bathroom to clean up. I charged my phone. I did my schoolwork at a corner table near the radiator where a librarian named Mrs. Osei gradually stopped pretending not to notice my situation and started leaving a cup of tea near my usual spot without comment. I never thanked her properly. I have thought about that many times since. I finished high school. I don't say that lightly. I finished high school while sleeping in a bus shelter, which is a sentence I used to practice saying flatly so it wouldn't break my voice when I said it out loud. My parents did not attend graduation. I sat in a folding chair in a gymnasium that smelled like floor wax and rubber soles and received a diploma with my name on it from a principal who mispronounced my last name, and I thought, this is the first thing that is entirely mine. I was wrong about that. There would be more. But I didn't know that yet. What I knew was that after the ceremony ended and the gymnasium emptied and the other families went somewhere for dinner, I walked back to the bus shelter on Clement and 9th and sat on the familiar hard bench and held my diploma in both hands in the dark. and I made myself a single promise. I didn't write it down. I didn't say it out loud. I just held it quietly in the center of whatever was left of me after 17 years in that house and 3 months on that bench. You will not end here. I had no idea yet what beginning looked like, but I knew, with the particular certainty of someone who has nothing left to lose, that I was about to find out. The first real job I got was cleaning offices. Not a glamorous detail, but an important one. Because the way you feel about unglamorous work tells you something about who you are when nobody is watching. I was 18, freshly graduated. I still sleeping in the bus shelter, but with a diploma now and a slightly less cracked phone screen because I had saved enough to replace the glass at a repair shop on Market Street. A woman named Gloria hired me. She ran a small commercial cleaning company, 4 employees including herself, a van that needed the passenger window coaxed down manually, and a client list of 12 office buildings that she managed with the focused intensity of someone who had built something from very little and intended to keep it. She interviewed me in a coffee shop, looked at my application for exactly 45 seconds, and said, "You listed the library as your address." I said, "Yes." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Can you start Thursday?" I have never forgotten that. The absence of a follow-up question. The simple decision to move forward rather than investigate. Some people extend dignity so naturally they don't even know they're doing it. Gloria didn't know she changed my life on a Thursday. I worked for her for 14 months, night shifts mostly, office buildings after hours, the particular quiet of spaces designed for people who had gone home. I learned things in those buildings that I couldn't have learned anywhere else. Not cleaning, though I learned that too, thoroughly. I learned how offices worked, how businesses were structured. I read the whiteboards people left uncovered. I noticed the org charts on walls, the project timelines, the revenue figures that people wrote in dry erase marker assuming no one outside the meeting would ever see them. I was invisible in those buildings. Invisibility, I was learning, had uses. I saved every dollar I could. Not comfortably, the same way I had done everything since I was 17. Which is to say, with the focused desperation of someone who understands that the margin between stability and the bus shelter bench is thinner than people with houses ever realize. By the time I was 19, I had enough to rent a room. Single bed, shared bathroom, a window that faced a brick wall 3 feet away. I stood in it the first night with my bag on the floor and put both hands flat on the wall and felt the solidity of it. Actual walls. An actual door with an actual lock, and something in my chest that had been clenched for 2 years very slowly released. My parents didn't know where I was. I had not contacted them. Not out of performance, not to make a point. I simply had nothing to say yet. I was still in the part of the story where surviving took everything I had. There was no bandwidth left for conversations that would cost more than they returned. Marcus found me online when I was 20. A follow request from an account I didn't recognize, but the profile photo was him. Older, taller, same expression I remembered from the top of that staircase. I accepted it without knowing exactly why. Some door in me opened before I had time to decide whether it should. He messaged 3 days later. "Hey, I heard you graduated. That's really cool." 2 years late. Completely inadequate. Probably the best he could do at 16 with whatever version of events he'd been given inside that house. I wrote back, "Thanks. How are you?" We talked occasionally after that. Carefully, the way you talk across a distance you both know is there but haven't agreed on how to name. He never mentioned our parents directly. Neither did I. What I noticed in those sparse, careful messages was that he asked me for things. Small things at first. Advice on a school project, the name of a book I'd mentioned once, then slightly larger things. A loan for driving lessons. A reference for a summer job application. I said yes, both times. Have you ever said yes to someone not because you trusted them, but because you were still hoping to be wrong about them? I was 22 when I got my first real break. Not luck, not a windfall. A decision. A calculated, terrifying, Was everything on the line decision that I made alone at a kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a spreadsheet and a business plan and the quiet memory of a promise I had made to myself on a hard bench in the dark. But I didn't know yet how far that decision would take me, or who would come looking once it did. Part 3. The decision I made at 22 was this. I would buy a property, not a mansion, not anything close, and a small foreclosed duplex on the edge of a neighborhood that everyone described as up and coming, which is a phrase that means different things depending on whether you have money or not. If you have money, it means opportunity. If you don't, it means risk. I was somewhere in between, which meant I understood both sides of it clearly. I had saved for 4 years, every cleaning shift, every skipped meal that wasn't strictly necessary. Every small sacrifice that nobody witnessed and nobody credited because that's the nature of private discipline. It happens in the dark, and the results look like luck to everyone watching from the outside. The down payment cleared by $400. $400 between me and the version of this story where I didn't take the chance. I rented out the lower unit immediately. The upper unit I lived in myself, bare floors, secondhand furniture, a kitchen that needed more work than I had time for but functional enough. I learned property management the same way I had learned everything since I was 17, by doing it imperfectly at first and then doing it better. Within 18 months I had refinanced. Within 3 years I had 2 more properties. I want to be precise about this because I think the speed of it gets misread as fortune when it was actually something closer to compounding. Small, correct decisions building on each other the way interest builds, slowly at first, and then faster than you expect. There was no single moment where everything changed. There were 100 small moments where I chose the harder right thing over the easier wrong one and kept moving. By 27, I had a small real estate portfolio and a reputation in my city as someone who knew how to turn neglected properties into functioning ones. That was when the calls started coming from people with bigger problems than mine. And that was when the money became real. My parents found out through a cousin, the particular telephone network of extended family that carries information with the speed and reliability of infrastructure. Someone had seen my name in a local business profile. Someone else had driven past one of my buildings. The information assembled itself into a picture, and the picture traveled. My mother called on a Tuesday evening. I was in my car outside a property inspection when the phone rang, a number I had kept but never used. I sat with it ringing in my hand for 4 full seconds before I answered. Her voice was exactly the same, warm in the way that costs nothing because it isn't backed by anything. The particular warmth of someone who has decided that enough time has passed to make the past feel negotiable. "We've been thinking about you," she said. "We heard things are going well." I said, "They are." She said they'd love to see me. That family was family. That whatever had happened, she used that phrase, whatever had happened, as though the specific events were uncertain rather than documented in the memory of every cold night I had ever spent on that bench, was in the past now. I agreed to dinner. I don't fully know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the part of me that still carried 17 years of wanting to be seen by the people who were supposed to see me first. Maybe I just needed to look at them across a table and confirm what I already suspected, that they had not changed and that I no longer needed them to. The dinner was at their house, same good plates in the same cabinet. My father shook my hand at the door like I was a business contact he was cautiously impressed by. My mother served food she knew I had liked as a child, which is a specific kind of manipulation dressed as affection. Marcus was there too, 23 now, still living at home, working a job he described vaguely and changed the subject away from quickly. He hugged me at the door and said, "It's so good to see you." And I thought, is it? Because the last time I had seen him in person, he was 14 years old, standing at the top of a staircase watching me pick up a bag by the door. And his expression had not been the expression of someone who would one day say, "It's so good to see you," and mean it without conditions. I smiled and said it was good to see him too. And I sat down at that table and ate the food and answered careful questions about my work and waited to find out what this dinner was actually for. I didn't have to wait long. The dinner conversation moved the way rehearsed conversations do, carefully, in a direction, with the particular momentum of something that has been discussed before you arrived and is now being performed for your benefit. My father asked about my portfolio, how many properties, what areas, what the market was doing. I answered honestly but briefly. My mother refilled glasses and nodded at things in a way that had nothing to do with what was being said. But Marcus was quiet, which was its own kind of loudness. By the time dessert came, I had identified the shape of it. They were building towards something. The warmth, the good plates, the food I had liked at 17. It was all scaffolding around a request that hadn't been spoken yet. I had spent enough time in rooms where people wanted things to recognize the architecture of it. I just waited. My father set down his fork, straightened slightly, and said, with the calm of a man who believes his authority is still fully intact, that Marcus was at a difficult point in his life, that he needed a foundation. That stability at this age was everything, that I had more than enough, more than I could ever need, really, and that family takes care of family. And then he said it. The mansion should go to Marcus. You have other properties. He has nothing. It's the right thing to do. The table was very quiet. My mother looked at her plate, and Marcus looked at me with an expression I recognized, the same one from the staircase, updated for adulthood. Not guilt, expectation. I thought about the bench on Clement and Ninth, the cold, the hard seat, the Thursday cleaning smell, the diploma held in both hands in the dark. I thought about $400. I thought about every single thing I had built alone, without a safety net, without a family dinner, without anyone putting good plates out for me. Oh, and I felt something move through me. Not anger, not quite. Something cleaner than anger. Something that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. I looked at my father. Then I smiled. "Give me 1 minute," I said. I pushed my chair back from the table, walked to the hallway, and opened the safe. Part 5. The safe was built into the hallway wall behind a painting I had chosen specifically because it was unremarkable. Nobody had ever asked about it. I had installed the safe 2 years ago, not out of paranoia, but out of the same practical instinct that had guided every decision since I was 17. Important documents belong somewhere protected, somewhere that requires intention to access, somewhere that cannot be casually picked up and moved like a throw pillow or a decorative bowl. I knew exactly what I was looking for. My fingers found it on the second shelf, a single manila folder, thin, held closed with a plain metal clip. I took it and walked back to the dining room and sat down at my place at the table. 8 pairs of eyes followed me. I set the folder flat in front of me and put both hands on top of it and looked at my father first, then my mother, then Marcus. Nobody spoke. I opened the folder. Inside was a document I had prepared 14 months ago with my attorney, not in anticipation of this exact dinner, but in anticipation of exactly this kind of moment. Because I had understood. From the first phone call my mother made on that Tuesday evening, that reconciliation and transaction can wear the same face and only time tells you which one walked through the door. I had been paying attention. The document was a detailed personal financial record. 14 pages. Every property purchased, every date, every down payment amount, every mortgage drawn in my name alone. Appended to it was a single-page summary my attorney had drafted, clear, plain language, as the kind designed to be understood without legal training. At the bottom of the summary was one highlighted line. All assets listed herein were acquired solely by the named individual without familial financial contribution of any kind. I turned it to face the table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I left this house at 17 with $43 and a cracked phone," I said. "I slept in a bus shelter for 3 years. I finished school. I cleaned offices. I saved. I built everything I own from that beginning and nothing else." The room was completely still. This document exists because I knew one day someone would suggest that what I built belongs to someone else by virtue of family. It doesn't. Legally, morally, in every way that can be documented, it is mine. My father opened his mouth. I held up one hand, quietly, firmly. Part 6. The table stayed silent. My father's mouth closed. My mother's hands were folded in her lap, very still. The way hands get when the person they belong to is working hard to appear composed. Marcus was looking at the folder with an expression I had never seen on him before. It looked something like shame. I continued. "I don't say any of this with anger," I said. And I meant it. My voice was level, my hands were steady, the folder sat flat on the table between us like a finished conversation. I say it because I think this family has operated for a very long time on a version of events that conveniently leaves out certain details. My mother shifted in her seat. "I was 17, I said. "I had done nothing wrong. I was put out of this house with $43 because I was inconvenient. Nobody checked on me, nobody called, not once in 3 years." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Quiet truth in a silent room carries further than shouting ever does. "Oh, I built my life without this family. Not despite you, without you. There is a difference. Despite implies obstacle. Without implies absence. You were simply not there." My father looked older suddenly, smaller in his chair than he had been at the beginning of the evening. I looked at Marcus. He was staring at the table. "I have no interest in punishing anyone," I said directly to him, "but I will not be handing you something I bled for because the family has decided you deserve it more." Deserve is a word that requires a verb before it. What did you do? What did you build? What bench did you sit on? He didn't answer. Nobody answered. I closed the folder, placed it back in my hands, stood up from the table with the same quietness I had sat down with. "I came tonight because I wanted to look at this clearly," I said. "I have. I wish everyone here well. Genuinely." I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. My mother said my name. Just my name. Nothing after it. See, for dinner. I drove home incomplete for dinner. I drove home in complete silence. No music, no phone calls, just the quiet of a night that had finally said everything it needed to say and had nothing left to fill itself with. The mansion was dark when I pulled in. I sat in the driveway for a moment before going inside, looking at it the way you look at something you built when you need to remind yourself it's real. The facade, the windows, the door I had chosen from a catalog on a Tuesday night after a long day of work. Mine. Every corner of it earned in a way that required no explanation to anyone who had ever gone without. I went inside and made tea and sat at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me and just breathed. My phone lit up twice that night. My mother once. Marcus once. I read both messages without responding. My mother's said she hoped I was okay. Marcus's said he hadn't known the full story, that he was sorry. I believed him about the first part. The second part would take time to mean something. I thought about the girl who had slept on a bench on Clement and 9th, the one who held a diploma in the dark and made a single quiet promise to herself. I thought about Gloria and her van and the cup of tea left without comment. I thought about $400 and a duplex and every compounding decision between that beginning and this kitchen. That girl had carried all of this here. She deserved to sit in it peacefully. I put the folder away, finished my tea, turned off the kitchen light. Some people wait their whole lives for the family that should have claimed them to finally see them clearly. I had stopped waiting. I had built something better instead. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever built something from nothing, drop it in the comments. Your story matters.